Today we are going to be learning what a hemisphere is and why would we divide the earth into hemispheres. The earth is like a sphere. This means it's round like an orange. It's a 3D shape. Can you think of some other 3D shapes in your house? I can think of a basketball. We have a yoga ball and a baseball. Those are spheres in my house. What about you? Imagine cutting an orange in half. Half of the sphere is called a hemisphere. People have drawn imaginary lines to divide the earth. This makes it helpful to locate places. So the reason that we divide the earth into hemispheres is so it's easier for us to find or locate places. Let's learn more about the hemispheres of earth. One of the lines that is made when we divide the earth into hemispheres is the equator. The equator is an imaginary line around the middle of the earth. So you're not going to see this line in the middle of or at the top of South America. It's imaginary, but it helps us know that these continents are located in the northern part of the globe and these continents are located in the southern part of the globe. Also, we have the North Pole at the top and the South Pole at the bottom. This map here is a map from outer space taken by satellites. So you can see clouds on top of the continents, which is really cool. So again, the equator divides the Earth into the northern and southern hemispheres. So here's what it looks like if we were to cut it in half. So you can see that the southern part of South America is in the southern hemisphere, and a small part of South America is in the northern hemisphere. But North America and Virginia, where we live, it's in the northern hemisphere. Did you know that areas that are along the equator have much warmer climates? So, let's look at a globe and see where our continents are located. So, let's look at the northern hemisphere. So, I see this continent, which is, yep, North America, and part of this continent, which is, yeah, South America. And then we have which one here? Yeah, Africa. So, part of Africa is in the northern hemisphere. And then what's this continent? Yeah, that's Europe. And then if I go over, we have Asia. Very good. And some pieces of Asia are in the southern hemisphere. So in the southern hemisphere, we have South America, Africa, a little bit of Asia. What's this continent? Yeah, Australia. And Antarctica are in the southern hemisphere. There is also another imaginary line used to divide the earth. This is called the prime meridian. Can you say that word? Prime meridian. The prime meridian is an imaginary line that divides the globe from the top of the planet to the bottom. It divides the globe into the western hemisphere and the eastern hemisphere. So here we have the equator. It divides it through the middle, and the prime meridian divides it from the top to the bottom. So our prime meridian makes the western hemisphere and the eastern hemisphere. In a small city in England, there is a metal strip to show the prime meridian. That's cool because most of the time, those imaginary lines can't be seen. Let's look and see what continents are in the western hemisphere. So on the west, we have North America, South America, Antarctica, part of Africa, and part of Europe. On the eastern side, we have Europe and Asia, Africa, Australia, and Antarctica. The equator and prime meridian are imaginary lines used to divide the Earth. It makes it easier to locate where places are and to locate where you are on the globe, too. Do you know what hemispheres you live in? If you said northern hemisphere, you're right. And western. Awesome job. So we're going to practice a little bit so we can be masters of knowing our hemispheres. So here the equator makes the northern and southern hemispheres, and the prime meridian makes the western and eastern. And this compass rose here helps me tell my cardinal directions. So first, let's practice by identifying these imaginary lines. Which one goes across the middle of the globe? Is it the equator or the prime meridian? Very good. The equator. That line is the one that goes across the middle. Now, this this line here down the middle is the prime meridian. So you can remember middle meridian. Great job helping me identify those two imaginary lines that help us locate places on the globe. Now, let's practice what hemispheres they make. So this imaginary line down the middle of the Earth here, right across it, across the middle of the Earth, is called that's the equator. So what hemisphere does this make? Think about your cardinal directions. What direction is this? Yeah, you're right. This is the northern hemisphere. And this is where we live. So we live on the northern hemisphere. Which imaginary line made this hemisphere? I look and it goes from the north to the south down the middle. So that is the prime meridian. And I'm going to use my cardinal direction to help me figure out what this is called. So I'm going to think about my compass rose and what is the direction on this side? If you said eastern, you're correct. We don't live in the eastern hemisphere, but we would if we lived in Australia, like Alexander and the No Good, Terrible, Horrible, Bad Day. That's where he wants to live. Which imaginary line created this hemisphere? It's this one right here. What's the name of that? Very good. That is called the prime meridian. And so we knew this is east, so this must be, yes, west. And we live in the western hemisphere. So you can tell your parents, I know that I live in the northern hemisphere, created by the equator, and the western hemisphere, created by the prime meridian. Now, which line created this hemisphere? It's this line that goes through the middle of the globe. Yeah, that's the equator. And so we know that this was the northern hemisphere, so this must be the southern hemisphere. All right, our last job today is to name these hemispheres with both directions. Do you think we could do it? First, I'm going to label where my equator is. So would it be this line or that line? Yep, that's going to be my equator right there. And then the other line is going to be my prime meridian. So the prime meridian makes our eastern and western hemispheres, and the equator makes the northern and southern. I'm going to go ahead and move these pieces out of the way because it will make it hard for us to do our next part. So I need to name each one of these hemispheres. So I know that this part is the northern hemisphere. So what direction would this side also be? Yeah, it's west. So this hemisphere is northern and western. It's on the north up here and on the west on this side. What would this one be down here? Yeah, it's on the south. So is it going to be east or west? Very good. That one is southern and eastern. So if this is southern and eastern, what would this hemisphere be? Yeah, it's going to be the opposite of the south, but it's still going to be on the east side. So that's northern and eastern. And here we're going to have the opposite of north, but it's going to have west still in it. Very good. So we have northern and western, northern and eastern, southern and western, southern and eastern. You guys did a great job locating the hemispheres today. Go ahead and try out the Nearpod to see how much you learned today in our lesson.